There you are.
Hello, Facebook. Wow. Okay. I think we're doing this. All right. Good evening, everyone, and prepare yourself for an imperfect hour of a hard conversation that we are going to have between myself and my amazing friend Queen Wheeler, who is a soul coach. And I'll have her explain how she approaches her work in just a bit here when I turn it over. So most of my role this evening is basically sharing the mic on my platform. Queen has begun an initiative to have some of these hard conversations on racial and social justice topics, where we just dive in and start talking about stuff. And so there's no script here. We do have a topic this evening, and I'm going to read out that topic, and then Queen is going to break it down for us, and I'll contribute where I can. And the topic for tonight is the philosophical aspects of cultural difference. And so we'll dive into what that means in just a few here. I think it's important to note that I've been seeing on my feed a lot in the last couple of weeks since the murder of George Floyd, a lot of white people going, I don't know what to do. What do I do? How can I help? What do I do? And so I think certainly a big part of that is doing a lot of reading and doing your own research and looking at many of the resources that have been put out in the last few weeks. Certainly those are good first steps, but really engaging in discussion and conversation, even if you're afraid you're going to screw it up, even if you're afraid you're going to make a mistake or say a wrong thing, I think that's really important to the way that we all move forward together. And I'm so excited that 7 people are watching us right now. And because I am new to this particular StreamYard technology, I can't quite figure out how to learn who they are or if they can comment, but I know they're here. So woohoo, I'm really excited. So with that, let me turn it over to my dear friend and fellow coach, Queen Wheeler.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First of all, you saw me over here cheesing because you started off talking about my part is to like share my mic and just no, Leah, you just tried to get out of the conversation before.
Okay, fair enough. And you can see I'm turning purple now, so it's all good.
Mm-hmm. That is so funny. And listen, I am not laughing at her. I'm laughing with her because this is what happens when we're in hard conversations around race, right? This is what happens because you shrink back a little because you're not sure you're quite equipped enough to have the conversation, or that you don't have quite enough information to have the conversation in a meaningful way that doesn't make you feel like you're sticking your foot in your mouth or that you're offending or what have you. Yeah. So it's a natural reaction. It's a natural response. And that's why I'm laughing. I'm laughing with you, not at you.
Well, I also brought these to the table tonight too, like just in case.
Just in case.
It's a box of tissue because I am like I cry at a pin drop. And in perimenopause, oh my God, it's so much worse. So just saying, that's where we are right now.
Right.
Full disclosure.
Right. Just so y'all know. If she cried, I mean her hormones spiked. But first of all, thank you all of your platform who's joining us tonight. Thank you for getting on for these hard conversations. One of the things that is the intention of this hard conversation is to always come curious and open, right? With we don't plan ahead. We don't plan out what we're going to say because you don't get to do that at home. At least I hope that's not what you're doing. Because when we see people butting heads, it's usually because they've planned something out that they want to say, that they want to get across. And because they've planned it out, that's what their whole focus is on. So it's not about listening. It's not about hearing and allowing thoughts to form. It's about, I already got my thoughts and I want to hold on to my beliefs. I want to hold on to what I think and feel. And therefore I come prepared to prove to you why, how I feel and think is correct. So on this series, which is, as Leah said, the philosophical aspects of cultural difference, it's probably going to be maybe a 5-part series. I just finished a series with Amy. I think we finished Friday night, and we did a series on the myths, white people facing race, the myths that hold racism in place. And there were 5 myths. So we will have a link to that as well, so that people can go back and listen to those. Wonderful conversation and information came out of that I think would be helpful to those who are on this
they
journey.
were good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it'd be
and
helpful.
Amy's here tonight. I can see her name in the people. So
Amy's
hey,
in
Amy, thanks for
hey,
coming.
Amy. Yes. And we're gonna have them centrally located as well. You could go to, as a matter of fact, you could go to hardconversations.live, and that will take you to all of the videos. And after we get finished with this series, we'll put these videos in there as well, so people can have a resource to go to. So
super.
Say that right off the bat. And then the other thing that I want to say before we get started is, you see I have on my Ohio State t-shirt and straight out of Akron cap, because in my home city tonight, where I grew up, once I got to school, I'm originally from Alabama, moved up there at school age and grew up there, graduated there before leaving home. But right there in Akron, where I still have family, my brother and sisters and nieces, nephews, aunts, cousins, all of my mom's people are still there. And there they are mourning the death of a young Black woman who has been shot by a white man who's just riding around randomly shooting Black people. Because I'm guessing because he doesn't want the world to change. He's spazzing out right now, at the thought of the world changing. And so I pay homage to my home city, Akron, Ohio, and you are in my prayers. Please stay safe, protect yourself, protect your children, and don't go out if you don't have to, but if you do, be vigilant. So our prayers and thoughts are going out to Ohio tonight, Akron, Ohio, to be exact.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That the hassles of being Black, So for those of you who question, is it really harder? Is it, or are we making this stuff up and just being paranoid? If you're Black, you're a target, and you don't know whose target you are on that any given day, whether it's going to be the police or a socially deputized white man who just decides that he wants to guard and protect his territory, which is all land, all of America.
Yeah.
Right?
Can I jump in with a thought?
Yes,
I just want to, one thing that I think is really important in all these conversations, especially for white people, is to start putting on our empathy shoes and glasses and, just putting on our empathy. And one of the ways that I think that helps is if we can relate that experience that you just described to something in our own experience. And so as a woman, for me, we can maybe look at how we as women feel after dark. We feel targeted. We feel a lack of safety. We feel like we shouldn't or can't go walk around freely in certain neighborhoods. And I think there's racism that's wound up in that too. But just speaking to the experience of feeling targeted or feeling afraid, I just want to call out white women to look back in their experience for times in their life when they may have felt a taste of what that is like. And for us, it's probably going to be gender related.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I just wanted
Yeah.
to bring that up.
Yes. Yes. So tonight, we are talking about the philosophical aspects of cultural differences. Now, this was some of the studies that I did when I studied with Dr. Joy DeGruy. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know her, she's the author of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I would recommend that book to any and everyone. She's also a professor, and she teaches a course around race relations, specifically how it's for around the Black experience and how racism affects Black people, and how we have suffered the symptoms, the things that have carried down from slavery all the way to today, and that we're
Mm-hmm.
still suffering from. And so, anyway, in her course, one of the case, the readings that we had was the philosophical aspects of cultural differences by Dr. Edwin J. Nichols, PhD. Now I have to read this, so I'm going to be looking over a little bit, and I have to make that disclaimer because my son will talk about me, because he tells me, put it in front of your face so you're not looking down and looking.
Right.
He's trying to help his mama out.
I know, that's so sweet. We need all the help we can get in this generation.
Girl, please. Sometimes sometimes he just being a hater. He don't want me to be great. He don't want his mama to be great. He just won't let me
Amy's posting some links for us. So thanks, Amy, for being our little support
Yes,
angel over there. So
yes.
she has posted the name of the book by Dr. Degree, and also her online course. So for
Thank
anybody
you.
who's looking for that, that should be, hopefully it's visible in the comments. And if not, we can stick it in there later. So. Mhm.
Okay, so Edwin J. Nichols, PhD, Dr. Nichols is a psychologist, a clinical industrial psychologist. He traveled all around and really studied different cultures.
Mhm.
He actually did his dissertation in High German. Like, that's how brilliant this man is. He is a Black man and from the U.S. And he traveled around. He lived within cultures, observing cultures, being in cultures, and so he came up with this chart where he listed what he learned about the different cultures. Now tonight we're going to talk about axiology. So let me define that for you. Axiology, according to the dictionary on Google, I don't know which one they're using right here, but anyway, it says the study of the nature of value and valuation, and of the kinds of things that are valuable, a particular theory of axiology. So it's what one values, the nature of how they value things, and so that's what we're looking at, how different cultures do that. So you want to read the
Yes.
and we're going to focus on African Americans and white people, because that's the climate we're in right now. But Lee, I think you should read through all of them, because I think it gives us a real balance of what's needed overall, because everybody has a piece.
Okay. And so, yeah, so this list is basically how what each culture's highest value is amongst sort of just within culture. And there are four of these definitions. The first one on the list is European and Euro-American. So basically white people and their descendants, white people in America, white people in Europe. The highest value, the title of the axiology is member to object. which means that the highest value for this culture lies in the object or the acquisition of the object. And we'll break that down in just a bit. The second ethnic group and worldview is African, African American, Hispanics, and Arabs. So all of those ethnic groups fit into this similar axiology, which is member to member. The highest value for this culture lies in the interpersonal relationships between persons. Okay, so that's number 2. And then number 3, the ethnic groups or worldviews are Asians, Asian Americans, and Polynesian peoples. Okay, so for these groups, their highest cultural value is member to group, which means that above all else, they value the cohesiveness of the group. And I take that to mean, how does everybody interact? How do they get along in the group dynamic? And then the last one is Native American. And the axiology is member to great spirit. So the highest value for this culture, for the Native American culture, lies in their sense of oneness, oneness with the Great Spirit. So once again, European, Euro-American, our biggest value is member to object. African American, Hispanics, and Arabs is member to member. That's an interpersonal relationship. For Asians, Asian Americans, and Polynesians, it's member to group. The cohesiveness of the group defines their value. And then in the Native American cultures, member to great spirit is the highest value within that culture. How is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. So member to object and member to member, and we're just doing right now for white people and then black people as well, because
Okay.
I'm black and I'm speaking from the black perspective, and she's white, she's speaking from the white perspective.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, when we were discussing us doing this, right? When we were discussing us doing this and having conversation over some other things as well, this actually played out in real time.
Yeah.
As we were talking, it played out in real time, and how we were addressing what we were talking about and how we were thinking.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. Like, it was fascinating. I thought about that for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that Dr. Nichols said is that it is very unlikely that this changes for a culture.
Right.
Right. It's very unlikely that this changes at all. Okay. This is ingrained. This is pretty solid.
Yeah. It's the soup. It's the cultural soup.
Yeah. It's
that you're indoctrinated into.
So it makes sense why it is so crazy in these streets today. Right? Because you have one group whose axiology, right, their value is member to object. You're trying to take my flag. You're trying to take my guns. You're trying to take my rights. You're trying to take my
power.
It's member to object. And I value my objects. I value, because I worked hard for, that's one of the things that you hear all the time too, is, well, I worked hard for my this, and we worked hard for, and if you want it, you work hard for it. Y'all don't work hard, then you don't get that kind of thing. It's member to object. Whereas then you have the Black peoples who are like member to member. So it's like, I don't give a damn if all of your stuff burned down. What I care about is that life that was snuffed out with a knee on his neck. You think I care about whether your building just burnt down, or whether your statue coming down, or whether you get to wave a flag of a losing side? Right? Do you think so that's the conversation coming from Black people. and it's heard as angry. Oh, well, they're
Mm-hmm.
just angry people, and they just want everything. They just want all of our stuff. Now they want our statues, and then they want our, right? Where Black people are saying, no, what I want you to do is get your knee off my neck.
Right. Yeah. I think that gets misinterpreted a lot. And I think that there can be like if we talk about these axioms, there can be an assumption that the way we approach our identity is bad or wrong. And intrinsically, it's not. It's just a thing. It's just the way you relate to the world and the stuff around you. But when it becomes out of balance, or when it pits, one group against another group, is when those dynamics blow up into something really negative, or something violent, or something with the perception that gets misperceived. And so I think if we can look at our unique cultural axioms as neutral. So I'm, like, it's not likely that I'm going to change the way I identify with the world in my American European axiom. I'm always going to have that point of view of member to object, but the way I enact it is key. And the degree to which I can be open and accepting of that other people do it differently, and other people have different mindsets and identities in that way.
Because there has been no room for anyone else's axiology in the US, it has become a materialistic place.
Yes,
because it's
absolutely.
member to object.
Because that's out of it. Balance. Yeah,
right.
That's the
it's
only.
Out of balance. So that in the extreme is materialism. And that's why we see materialism, because that's who's in control, member to object. Yes. That's why whenever you mention social services, they say, oh, so you want socialism. You want the, right? It's an immediate rejection of, because there's no room for anyone else's axiology. There's no room for anyone else's culture except the white culture here in America.
Yes.
So it's very materialistic. It's all about the dollar. It's all about corporations, right? It's all about corporations. It's not about people. One of the things in this whole COVID thing and that showed us is all of the disparities, right, between the majority and Black peoples, right, between white peoples and Black peoples, the disparities in every area, the healthcare system, right, employment, all of that, the disparities. So with that, it shows us that there has been no room for the member to member. And what happens when there's no room for the member to member? The people are not placed as a priority, but things are.
Yeah. Right? It's just the acquisition. It's the acquisition. We're getting in a really good question from Amy. Can I throw that in here? Yes. Okay. So she is saying she doesn't relate to the flag, gun, statues, and the acquisition of those things. And she says she guesses that I don't either, which is true. So I don't care about, it's not gonna. And those images of power aren't triggers for me, and I don't think they're triggers for a lot of other people either. But so she's wondering, how does the member object?
Wait a minute. You said you don't think they're triggers for a lot of other people. Girl, you know how many Confederate flags I got around me right now, around my neighborhood?
I bet you do.
Girl.
Okay.
I'm in Confederate flag and gun country over here.
Yes, honoring that. And sometimes I forget you're where you are. So it is a little different. But her question is, when those things aren't particularly triggering for a white person, okay? geographic notwithstanding. How does that member object play out for us? Because, you had said that we had discussed this the other day, and this was playing out right in a conversation. And I think we were talking about calling the police on people who live around you. I think that was the discussion, right?
Yeah.
And the way that I remember it is that I was feeling really conflicted about behaviors and how do you discern, and like it's a unique situation every time, and we need to have this really detailed, nuanced approach. And then you kind of said, or we could just blow it all up. am I remembering that accurately? Yeah.
My question to you and Amy, I have some ideas of what I think member to object is for those of you who aren't holding on to a gun and a flag.
Okay.
But you tell me what yours is.
Yeah. Okay.
What
hit it.
Are yours?
Oh, okay. So, for me, for me, it's the system itself. So like when I hear people so Minneapolis, right? I'm in Minneapolis, for those of you that don't know. So in Minneapolis right now, there's a big conversation about dismantling the police department. And my first response was, wait a minute, you're going to take away that system of order and that community resource. And what is that even going to look like? And I can't even wrap my brain around that. And so that's the knee-jerk response. Now, once I have that knee-jerk response, I can go in and ask questions and be like, okay, what does this look like? But the knee-jerk is, well, wait a second, you're screwing with my system, and that's not okay. Because then we're just going to have chaos, and we're all going to die, and nobody knows what's going to happen.
Right.
And so that is how I see that's one example of my member to object kind of really exploding when it feels threatened, shall we say.
I will tell you some of the observations I've had with white people member to object. My water.
Okay. So say more.
My water. So I don't care if Native Americans live on this land. That's my water. I have a right to it. I have a right to drill through it. I have a right to whatever. That's my water. My land. This is my land. I own this land. This is, and nobody has a right to step on this land or walk through this land right?
Yeah.
My right, right to go to college.
Okay. Yeah.
It's my right. I worked hard, and why should a Black person get a seat when that should be my seat, right? That's my seat.
Okay.
And the only reason they're getting it is because they're Black, right?
Yep.
Because it belongs to me, and you're taking it away from me to give it to this Black person.
So that would be like in response to some of the affirmative action measures that are taken in colleges or diversity initiatives.
Well, I'm not even so sure it's just a response.
Okay.
I think that it appears as a response when it is challenged, right? When you're in a situation where you might not get in because there was only so many seats, right?
Sure.
However, I'm talking about just the thought of going in. It doesn't even occur to you that somebody else can beat you out of a seat, especially not a Black, right? It's no, that seat belongs to us, and now they're giving it up because we got to let Black people in. Right? Okay.
Yeah. I think those are prime examples.
Yeah. So a lot of owning of things, whether it's education, whether it's loans, whether it's neighborhoods, whether it's neighborhoods, whether it's schools, they all, that's ours. That's ours. And the thing is
and we need to protect it. It's ours, and we have to protect it.
And we have to protect it. And so everything is that way. And I think that it's just an innate thing, right? It's innate in the US. And so to think otherwise is only when something is presented to you that makes you have to recognize that you first thought it was yours anyway. Right?
Right.
It's
There's
like,
this assumption.
it's
There's
right.
this,
Oh,
if I'm standing on it,
mhm,
then I must be entitled to it.
it's mine. It belongs to us.
Yeah.
And when you say us doesn't include Black people,
Right. It's my
right?
group and the people who
Yeah,
think and believe exactly the same way that I do.
yeah.
And here's another really interesting example. So I live in a section of the Twin Cities Metro, where we are adjacent to one of the most poverty, the poorest neighborhoods in Minneapolis. And then there's my town, like 8 feet away from that. And and I'm sure many people in other communities can definitely see this in their own communities too, where it's like you go to the opposite side of the railroad tracks and all of a sudden the restaurants really change. The
Right.
houses look like super different and visibly a lot less privileged and a lot less affluent. And then come to find out, so I know about redlining. I know that was a practice. Some people may not, but in some of the reading I've done and whatever, I've kind of dug into how that has all played out over the years. Well, I just found out over the weekend that on my house, my land deed or property deed, there is explicit language of this and this. So when the property was coded as as a housing lot or
Right.
whatever, there's explicit language in there, and this was back from like 1930, 1940, that
Which
says
wasn't,
this.
and that's not too long ago, y'all. That the
No,
people
it's
are
not.
still alive who
Yeah,
from then, okay?
yeah. And there's a list that says this property shall not be ever change hands or ever be sold to a person of Chinese descent, African descent, Jewish, I think was in there. But there was a laundry list of people who this property by law could not be sold to. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, like, wow. And I think it was just like everything, all of a sudden, just everything I'd been reading about privilege and redlining and just, Jim Crow and all these practices all of a sudden just landed. And I was like, oh shit, this is me and my ancestors. God damn it.
And wait a minute, but look at how when people say, well, I'm not privileged and I grew up poor, what have you, do you see how you benefited? Because
Yeah.
you were able to buy that house.
Yeah. Even if I had to
Because
scratch and claw my way into it
Mhm.
because I grew up poor, or I didn't have the resources, or I didn't have, get education or whatever. Yeah,
Wait,
I'm still
you
in the
just,
in group.
so listen, this is gonna sound okay. I'm just gonna do a disclaimer right up front because this is
Okay.
gonna sound kind of harsh.
Okay, but
However,
I'm ready. Hit me.
and I'm not the one who came up with this. I can't remember. It's a comedian, I think, and I don't know which one it is.
Mm-hmm.
But they said, can you imagine being white and you started off with the privilege of being white privilege, land handed
Mm-hmm.
to you? You know, you came over here
Mm-hmm.
like you just had to run and market, land given to you, you
Right.
know,
Yeah. Sprint
all
and
these
put your stake in the
handouts given
ground.
to you, all these handouts given to you. And now you find yourself sitting next to Black people. You lost all of that. Right? You lost all of that, and now you mad because you find yourself sitting right next to a Black person, and you mad at them saying, wait a minute, you shouldn't get any upper hand. What?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
got the upper hand and you lost it, and now you mad because you next to me, you live next door to me, or you sitting at the desk next to me, and will not give me the respect due for all of the obstacles,
yes.
all of the weights that I had to carry to catch up to you with such a head start. Like, but you, instead of telling the story that way, you tell the story of, well, I started off with nothing. Absolutely, no, you ain't start off with nothing. Now you might have lost a lot of
Right.
stuff. You
Right.
might have lost a lot of stuff, but you didn't start off with nothing, right?
I think that's super, yeah, I think that's just really a key thing to remember. And I think that that's such a hard piece of narrative to break through. The person who is saying, I'm white, I grew up in an abusive home, I was sexually assaulted, I was on food stamps, just like this laundry list of trauma and hardship, which all of those things are very real.
Yes.
Like nobody's disputing that.
Absolutely.
That's real. And there's language in the law that still makes it easier for you to get a loan on a house, to live in a neighborhood where these kinds of covenants are still in the outdated laws, but they're still written down.
Yeah.
And I think that is the key piece of ownership that is really like, that's a really big hurdle for many people to get over. And I'm not sure how to crack that nut.
You know what? Even when you just said that, even when you just mentioned all of the traumas, right?
Yeah.
Growing up in an abusive place, poor, sexually abused, emotionally abused, all those things. It's still the same narrative, because it's like, do you know how many centuries it took for you to get to that? We started off there.
Okay. Yeah.
You know how many centuries
I hadn't thought of it that way.
For you to break your family structure down.
Yep.
To the point of experiencing all of that trauma when we were brought into that trauma.
Yeah, you were born
immediately brought into our, as soon as we got on the boat, the trauma began, even before then, right? With the shackles, with the flogging, with the rape, with the abuse, with the breaking, right? With the stealing away, right? Immediately into trauma, and been in trauma since then.
Can you talk for a minute? Because again, I think this is a sticking point for so many of my fellow white people, is the statement, I didn't own slaves. My family members didn't own slaves. I didn't cause this problem. So it's not my responsibility to try to fix it. I just love everybody the same. And so do you know what I'm saying though?
Oh, yeah.
And so what I'd like for you to speak to a little bit, if you'd be willing, is can you give some examples of that initial PTSD, right? Or that initial trauma. And then how that perpetuates and comes down, because there's been so much scientific research on how that occurs. And and so I'm just wondering if you have a couple of key pieces of how we could have a takeaway of like, here's how the PTSD propagates.
Right. Well, so I'm going to say it this way. Because what I do know is that for anybody who is really, if that's really a sticking point for them, anybody who that's really a sticking point for, that need me to go through and say, how it perpetuates. Okay. And this is why I say that. Because the one thing that's never questioned or challenged by anybody sane, anybody sane, is how it affected how the Holocaust affected the Jewish community.
Right. Nobody questions that.
Nobody questions.
Nobody questions that.
It is hallowed ground.
Mm-hmm.
The museums are hallowed ground. The subject is hallowed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody questions that. You say the word concentration camp and it strikes a certain feeling in the heart of anybody who hears it.
Because we learn about it in our conventional history at a visceral level. We
Right.
read personal accounts.
Mm-hmm.
We watch movies.
Mm-hmm.
We see the visuals, and
you
we feel it.
and you do all of that by choice.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are plenty. Well, when I say by choice, I mean
it's in the schools. Like it's
yeah,
a part of what we're
yeah.
taught. Mm-hmm.
But even then, it's still by choice because there's plenty of stuff that we're taught in schools that
Mm-hmm.
we just kind of gloss over and just enough
Yeah.
to pass the test.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
However, there is a respect and an honor paid to that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And people go to the museums all the time. We travel around. I go to the museums when I travel around, right?
Yeah.
I watch the movies when they come out. I watch the documentaries when they come out. When we lived in Europe, I went to the concentration camps all the time. I went to many concentration camps.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that you are compelled to do out of a sense of compassion and regard for a people, right? For human beings being treated that way.
Yes. Yes.
So if that is the case, then what that tells me is if I have to go into detail about slavery, then it's because you choose to not want to feel, to see, or to understand. And by you wanting me to explain to you, you want to be justified by, well, I don't understand, but I don't understand. And it's on you to make me understand. And since you can't make me understand, it's not my fault. Since you
Yeah.
can't articulate it in a way that I understand it, it's not my fault, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's just a cop out. That's a
You're
cop
right.
out. Because if you can understand it with the Holocaust, and this was the biggest this Holocaust, the Black Holocaust, was way bigger than the Jewish Holocaust. And I'm not comparing them because both of them were tragedies that
Right.
were crimes against humanity, right? So it's not this one was better or worse or whatever. No, they were horrible, period.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm telling you is for one that went on for way longer, for generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
For over 300 years versus how long did the Holocaust go on, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a very short period in time, very short in comparison.
Yeah. Comparatively, yes.
To over 300 years, right?
Yes.
The amount of people who were murdered, very small in comparison to the amount, right? The atrocities that we know happened. What we know happened in the concentration camps, we know that they were made to work until exhaustion and sometimes to death. They were starved. They were burned, right? They were taken in and burned.
Right.
What do we know about slavery? We know that they were beaten. We know that they were starved. We know that they were raped. We know that they were used for scientific studies without any kind of anesthesia at all. So all of y'all who are going to the doctor and you feel so good about your gynecologist and you feel so good about your doctor, how do you think they came up with those methods? Who did they practice on?
And I
just want to take the skin off of, right? Who did they take the skin off of while alive? Who did they open up while alive? What women did they look inside of and move stuff around while they're alive? So we know scientific studies, rape of males and females, breeding like animals, breeding, to create a stronger enslaved person to work for them. Like,
Right.
we know all of these things. Hangings afterwards, hangings, whippings, all of that. We know that. Dogs, eaten by dogs, right? Babies who were sold as bait for alligators in Florida. That's what they would send the babies to Floridians would buy black babies for alligator bait. Yes, we know these things, right? So if you don't want to really look at how we got to where we are today, then yes, you can keep saying, well, slavery's been over and it wasn't that bad, or all slaves would get all of that kind of stuff. That's ridiculous. Because if you won't say it about the Holocaust, then that tells me that you are intentionally saying it about slavery.
Yes. I have a thought. Can I share it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's right at about this point where I start to feel like, I start to feel some shame come up. I start to feel some feelings like it's out of my head and it's here. And like, so I'm gonna leave that thought there for a moment, because again, I think this is where, and I'll keep it with me. So this is where I really have to, my initial response is to do this, right? And then I really have to go, okay, we got to take this in. We got to hear this. And by we, I mean me. Like that, that is the voice in my head talking to me, like, just breathe, just take it in. But I have to tell myself to remain in place, to listen to it and to hear it and to believe it. And where I don't have to tell myself to do that about the Holocaust. So I just want to kind of put that out there for a second, because I'm wondering if other people might also feel a similar response to that. And the other piece that that I actually just heard about today, and I'm going to share the name of this podcast. I was just listening to a podcast, and the podcast was The Armchair Expert, which is a really wildly popular podcast right now. And the guest that I listened to today was Ibram X. Kendi, who is a professor and an author, and he's written a bunch of books. One of which right now, like, is selling off the shelves, is How to Be an Anti-Racist. And anyways, and so they were in this conversation and talking about social justice, racial justice, and the thing that sparked me was this comparison of anti-racism and 12-step recovery work. And so if you have any familiarity with 12-step recovery work, the first of all, it's a lot of work. Like, recovering from an addiction is an everyday process. You have to do it consciously. You have to make the decision to recover every day, right? And there's work that you have to do to change your mindset and change your behaviors and do all this. And the first step in a 12-step group is we admitted we were powerless. And if you translate that over into anti-racism work, the first step towards doing any kind of meaningful anti-racism work is to say, I'm a racist. To admit that you are powerless over the soup that you've grown up in, the privilege that you have because you're white. So really just to face that with honesty. And then it doesn't get any easier after that, because then once you admit that, you have to feel all the stuff that is that comes along with it. And so as I'm sitting here just noticing my own reaction to your words and the experiences of your ancestors at the hands of my ancestors, like I just have, like, that is, for me, that is the crux of the work, is remaining present for that, listening to it, understanding it, admitting it, and owning it.
I'm glad that you used the word ancestors. So let's go there.
Okay.
One of the other things that we've learned about, staying with the theme of the Jewish Holocaust, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we've learned from studies that they've done to the descendants of those
Yes.
who were in the Holocaust, or just this Jewish people in general, even if they didn't have a family member in there, but
Mm-hmm.
being a part of is that the trauma was handed down through the DNA.
Yes.
And you can pass on those feelings. And we know that because we know that before they even did that study, you would be scared of spiders, not knowing why you're scared of spiders.
Mm-hmm.
But then somebody will tell you, oh my goodness, your grandmother was deathly afraid of spiders, and you didn't know where that came from.
Right.
Or I don't like this, or I don't whatever. And somebody will say, oh, your mother was like that. Right? So we know
Mm-hmm.
we've experienced that.
Yes.
But in the study, they've seen where these things can be passed down through the genes. It passed down, memories passed down, right?
Mm-hmm.
People who are in the spiritual community, they're starting to talk about passing down memories from past lives, is how they say
Right.
it. But
Right.
think about it. One of the things that we know about DNA is they could take our DNA right now and they can see everybody in it.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, look at what they've even done with the parsing out of the COVID virus, to use a recent example. They can point to it and go, this section is from a pig, this section is from a bat, this section is from,
Right.
wherever else. Mm-hmm.
So they look at your DNA, they see all your people. They'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
who your mama is, who your daddy is, who your mama's mama was, who your mama's mama what, right? Why?
Yeah.
Because they're all in here.
Yeah.
They're all in here. What all have they passed down? So when you are feeling that,
Mm-hmm.
it may not be this. That's why one of the things I tell white people, stop taking this so personal.
Right.
Stop taking it so personal and just take ownership of it.
Yeah.
We've had to take ownership of it. we have to take ownership of it, right?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
stop taking it so personal and just take ownership of it. Understanding that, hey, when I'm crying these tears, when I'm feeling this shame or whatever, it ain't just from you. All of them in there, all of them.
Yeah.
So if there's any shame to be had, you may be feeling some shame from yourself all the way back how many generations?
Well, and then when I can feel the shame too, I also feel anger at my own ancestors.
And they might be angry at themselves. Because let me tell you something, there's plenty of people today that's talking stupid who gonna be angry at themselves in the next 40 years when they look back at history and realize they were on the wrong side.
Yes, I agree. Mm-hmm.
There are going to be plenty of people who are going to be angry, thinking, how could I have not seen it? Or how could I have said that? Or how could I have done that to them?
Yeah.
Just like there are people right now with lips closed who were on the wrong side of history, who have gone into their caves. They don't really talk. They don't really say anything because they don't want anybody to know that they rode with the Ku Klux Klan. They don't want anybody to know that they went to hangings and took a picnic with them. They don't want anybody to know that as a child they saw these things or they heard this in their household, right, or what have you. So they go into hiding, right?
Yeah.
So guess what, people? Guilt, shame, all of that, all the human emotions are a part of this process.
Yeah.
Like you don't get to skip all of that.
No.
Just like I don't get to skip it. Right? Well, I don't get to skip it either. I feel when I'm feeling, when I'm angry, when I'm hurting, because I see another Black person die under the knee of a white cop, I'm not just crying for him. Do you realize I am crying and I am hurting for the one who was on the ship, laying so close to each other, defecating on each other, peeing on each other, throwing up on each other? I'm crying for them too, because they're in here. They are all in here. All of my ancestors are in here. So they are crying for him because they're looking through my eyes saying, my God, is it still going on?
It's still going on.
My God.
Yeah. And
we thought it would be done by now. We thought our
Right.
children would be free by now. We thought our children would be safe by now. My ancestors are crying, saying, hey, I thought my babies would be safe by now. I thought the world would be better for them right now. I took that beating so that they could be free. I tried to run away and took those lashings in the hope that they'll be free. I helped fight in the hope that they'll be free. I prayed in the hope that they'll be free. And now I'm looking through my child's eyes and I'm seeing another one of my babies dying. So yeah, all of our ancestors right now, everybody got something to say, right? We feeling all of that. We're feeling the energy of all of that. So my thing is, don't take it personal, just take ownership of it.
I love that. Don't take it personal, just take ownership. Because when you can take ownership, then you can change stuff.
Yes.
What we cannot change, what we won't see.
Yes.
Or what we don't own. And I think, and you made this, we're getting, I just want to say we've had some really good, surges in our viewers. And if Casey Tomich from high school, who I haven't talked to in like 20 years, if you're still here, hello to you. And thanks for joining us today. But I wanted to, I kind of lost my train of thought.
Do you have any questions or any, because I can't see the comment. Were there any questions?
No. Amy just mentioned when you take it personally, it makes it about you. It makes it about, if I take it personally, it makes it about me, and it keeps me stuck. Mm-hmm. It sticks me in defensiveness. And I'm going to expand on Amy's comment here a little bit. I get stuck in defensiveness. I get stuck in shame. I get stuck in guilt. I'm just stuck when I take it personally. Right. And when I can just go, yeah, this is the soup we all grew up in. And I grew up in that soup, and I'm ready to change the flavor of that freaking soup.
I used an analogy with Amy about the pool, which is like your soup analogy. Mm-hmm. Because I was having this conversation so many times, and I'm like, just take ownership of it. Don't take it personal, is what started coming up for me. And then I was like, look, we all know where we were born. We were born in America. We all know how it got started. We know that it got started with violence, stealing, plumaging, rape, murder, all of that. Mm-hmm. We know that. We know the white man came over here and wiped out millions, right? And then went and stole millions, right? To build the country. So we know that. So for us to say that we are not affected by racism and we don't have any racist tendencies within us, it's like us saying that we all were born into this pool and we looking at each other talk about, I'm not wet.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you wet? I'm not wet.
Yeah, I'm not wet. And so I'm like, no, the thing is, you get out the pool, you figure out, first of all, how to get out the pool.
Yeah.
How to acknowledge, okay, I was in the pool. Mm-hmm. I'm here in this place, and this is where we are. This is the situation. So how do I get out of the pool? And then you look at yourself and you go, okay, I'm wet. How wet am I? Right? Now you might not be as wet as your great grandfather, but you sure as hell ain't dry.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, and then it's, okay, what tools can I use? What towel, right? What tools can I use to dry off?
Where's the blow dryer? Yeah.
Right. What can I use to dry off? And then how do I change clothes, and or what clothes do I want to change into, I should say?
So
right?
can I go another layer there and say, because
Yeah.
I'm sure people will be wondering this.
Mm-hmm.
So the towels and the blow dryers and the fans, like if I had to say, that would be for white people doing the research and Googling the topics and listening to the podcasts with the Black authors and the Black filmmakers and the Black and not just Black either, but like Indigenous, Native American,
Right.
like
Right.
all of
Through
those affected
something other
groups.
than the white lens. Through something
Exactly.
other than the white lens. Yeah.
Something, so start seeing this country, our culture, through something other than your own white lens. So that's a hand towel, maybe. And then supporting organizations that like, is there, and so here's another big towel for me. And you and I talked about this, I think on Sunday when we had our chat. If you stay in your head about social justice and anti-racism work, it's not going to fully work. Like you can be doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing, but there has to be some kind of a point where you start feeling,
Mm-hmm.
where you start grieving, where
Yeah.
you're no longer crying tears of fragility and defensiveness and
Yeah.
shame. You're crying tears of humanity and empathy. And I can see this now. I didn't experience it, but I'm allowing myself to imagine it. I'm allowing myself to look through this lens and feel the feelings of what would it be like if I had to every day tell my 8-year-old son, if you see a cop, here are the 7 things you have to remember, or the 20 things you have to remember to stay alive.
Right.
And so I think that's a big towel.
Yeah.
Is taking it from, I went to a protest, I listened to a podcast, I donated to a cause. I have a Black Lives Matter sign in my yard, right? But how are we feeling? How are we feeling the things that we're doing,
Yeah.
or the things that we're trying to do?
You're talking about connecting to the experience, and
Yeah,
anything that you do, if you don't connect to the experience, you only gonna last about 90 days.
yeah,
Probably 89 days to be exact, because by the 90th day, you're going to need some more motivation or something else. And
right.
we don't want another Black man to have to die for you to get more motivation. Like that is just
Mm-hmm.
because right now, that's what's keeping a lot of people going is Black people dying. Well, we don't want to be the motivation,
Yeah,
right? We
you
don't
don't need
want
any
to
more
be
sacrificial lambs.
yeah, we don't need any more sacrificial lambs. So we need for you to connect to the experience. And that's what you're
Yeah.
talking about, Leah, is connecting to the experience. And so, one of the towels, and I think the first thing that you should reach for, and you can reach for something else simultaneously because you got two
Mm-hmm.
hands, right?
Yep,
Because you
yep.
can use a fan and a towel. But one of the first things, towels to reach for is doing your inner work on this,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Really looking at yourself and connecting to those parts of you that has been affected by racism. Of course, you and Leah, we've done this work together for over a year now.
Yeah, I can't
And
believe
it's
it.
been some hardcore work, right?
Mhm.
Hardcore
It
work
is.
where Leah has gone, like she has done the work to connect to all of that. And it, uh, for her, it ain't been pretty, right? And that was one of the reasons why she wasn't sure if she wanted me to walk beside her in it, because she's like, Queen, I don't know what's gonna come up. I might hurt your feelings. I don't know what's gonna come up, right? But she did it anyway, and some shit came up. Like it's amazing to me. I'm like, because she's raw with it. And of course, there were things that were surprising to you, correct?
Yeah,
Like you're gonna be surprised. You're gonna be
yeah,
shocked by the stuff that come out of you. Because of course,
yeah.
nobody wants to be attached to being a racist or having racist tendencies, but we're all wet, right? We're
Well,
all wet.
yeah, and I can say today with full honesty and full disclosure and really just the ownership piece. Like I can say it with ownership and not shame. I have a racist or biased thought every single day of my life.
Yeah.
Every single day of my life. And to be able, I think one of the keys for me was to be able to recognize that that is the soup, that is the pool, and to just go, okay, that's a fact. It is what it is. This is how I grew up. These are the thoughts that were given to me in many ways by the culture that I am part of. And then the question is, and what do I want to do about that?
There you go. There you go. There you
So
go.
that's, yeah. So sometimes the answer is, okay, I see that thought. I recognize it. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to tell myself a new story, or I'm going to create a new story around that, like that's different, so that I can try to change my mindset and slowly do that. And there was a beautiful moment. And again, I share this, just again, for people who might be just starting off with their piece of this work. And I shared this with you like way back in our thread. And I saw this woman walking at a park near my home, and she just had her shit together. Like, she was strutting. She had this beautiful outfit on. She just had this really nice look on her face. She just looked like the picture of beauty. And I just thought, there is a beautiful woman. And she was Black. And I saw her color. So it wasn't of like, oh, I don't see color. She's just a beautiful woman. I saw her color, and that was an intrinsic part of her beauty. And the way that she carried herself was regal. And I just thought, wow. And I think I shared that with you. Like, I think I just had a concept of somebody that acknowledged every piece of who they were and didn't feel racist to me, didn't feel biased, and it was like just that one shining thought in this sea of just goo of bias and whatever. And I'm like, okay, maybe we can change, And so I think it's important to recognize that, yeah, you can have those moments along the way, and you can have relationships like the one that you and I are continuing to build, where we acknowledge everything that's going on and everything that's hard about a Black woman and a white woman having these conversations and doing this work. And yet I feel this really just fascinating sense of love for you. I feel that in return from you. And I don't want to dissect that too much. I just want to be really grateful for it.
Well, I was just listening to Nikki Giovanni. She's a Black poet. She's still alive. So she's still one of our greatest gems of our community. And she was saying that one of she had a interview with James Baldwin back in the early 70s, I think it was. And when they were doing this interview, one of the things that they brought out is the moment that they were able to freely say, I don't like white people, was the moment that then there was possibility to like white people.
Yeah.
But to first be able to say, look, I don't like how you move. I don't like this stuff. I don't like how this affects that. I don't like, and then we can have an honest conversation.
Yeah.
Right. We can have, and I think what has been happening for the most part has been Black people saying, hey, I don't like this, because Black people have been at the other end of, I don't like you. I don't like how you move. I don't like how you politic. I don't like how you structure. I don't like how you, right? And so it just looked like a whole bunch of Black people who say they don't like white people, which white people love to say, oh, well, you're racist, right?
Yeah.
But there could never be a real conversation, because white people refuse to admit, I don't
the same
like
thing. Yeah.
I don't like Black people. I don't want you here. I don't, right? So it looked like we were just having a conversation by ourselves. So it just looks like it's a bunch of Black people who are complaining and don't, and they're the ones who are hateful. They're the ones that, because white people refuse.
We're not owning ours.
To owning up to, right, why it is that we don't like. We didn't just come out saying, oh, I don't like white people with no reason, like with no, right? Like we just looked at you and said, oh, we don't like you, right?
Yeah.
Or, oh, we're scared of you. Oh, no, we were reflecting back
Yeah.
that which was put on us.
Oh, yeah.
But white people have been refusing to have that conversation, refusing to take ownership of it, right? Because of, God forbid,
we
course
might
we're not
look a certain way. We might look like racists, we might actually.
No, I don't even think it's that you might look like racist. I think it's not considered racist because it's considered normal.
Okay,
so it's
yeah.
not racist. No,
Fair
this
enough.
is normal. So I don't know what y'all talking about.
Right.
Like,
what's your problem?
Normal. This is normal. This is godly. We are righteous. We are right. So I don't know what your problem is. I don't know why you don't like me. I don't know why you so mad all the doggone time. I don't know why y'all marching and why you are, please, you live in the best country in the world. I don't know what your problem is.
Yeah.
Like white people, there are white people who are still talking like that.
Have that story, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Who are still talking like that. I don't know what their problem is, why they marching, why they can't just be satisfied. Now they want our statues and now they want our this and that's, all of that ridiculousness. But hopefully it's changing. I mean, I'm starting to see some things. I hope it's a real change. I'm hopeful that it is. Something has changed this time.
Since we're doing, which I'm so excited about, a 5-part series, and also because I have to go to the bathroom. What if we bookmark for tonight?
Yes.
And we'll continue tomorrow. So I just want to wrap it up and say that this has been kind of a roundabout discussion kicked off by the axiology of the difference between the axiology of the European, Euro-American culture and the African, African-American, Hispanic, and Arab culture, of that white people, Europeans, Euro-Americans, primarily operate out of member to object as the highest value in our culture, and how that's played out over the centuries. And then African American axiology is member to member, the interpersonal relationships between people, and how that's played out and forms all this conflicting garbage that we're dealing with now, and some ways that we can blow it up. It starts from me. It starts with me.
We're going to get deeper as the days go on. Tomorrow is epistemology. So it's going to go deeper, and the conversation will be rounded out as we go on over the next few days. So those of you who are joining us tonight, please join us again tomorrow, same time.
Yeah.
So over the next 4 or 5 nights, same time. Thank you so much for your input. Send in questions if you have them, comments. Good. Y'all have a good night, and hopefully we will share it with your friends. Share it.
I was going to say, everybody share if you valued this discussion and it hit home for you in any way. Share it with your other peeps on your own platform. I really I'd love to get more people having these kinds of conversations, because they feel really good, even though they're hard and emotional, like they're healing too.
And Akron, Ohio, prayers to you.
Okay. Prayers to Akron, Ohio as well. Let's keep doing the things that prevent more people being sacrificed needlessly.
Yes.
All right. Good night, everyone. And thank you.